It started out like any other Thursday evening. I'd finished work earlier than usual and decided to surprise my wife, Emily, with dinner. But lately something about her had changed. She seemed distant, distracted, her eyes always on her phone, her laughter saved for whoever was on the other end of those constant messages. I told myself it was just stress, that I was imagining things. Still, as I drove home that night, a quiet unease settled deep in my gut and refused to let go. When I pulled into the driveway, her car wasn't there. The house was dark, cold, and felt strangely empty. My stomach tightened. On impulse, I opened the location-sharing app we'd set up years ago, back when trust between us didn't need proof. Her little dot blinked from a bar across town. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just meeting friends after a long week. But that small, relentless voice in my head whispered otherwise. I grabbed my keys again and drove off, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The bar was dim and warm, filled with low chatter, soft laughter, and the hum of jazz in the background. I spotted her almost immediately. Emily, her hair falling gently over her shoulders, her face glowing under the candlelight. Sitting beside her was a man, leaning close, his hand resting over hers like it belonged there. My heart stopped. I stood frozen, watching as he whispered something that made her smile. That same soft smile that once belonged only to me. She didn't flinch, didn't glance around nervously. She looked comfortable, happy. That cut deeper than anything else. For years I had stood by her through sickness, debts, dreams, and nights when the world outside didn't matter as long as we were together. And now she was throwing it all away for a moment's thrill. I didn't need her confession. I saw everything I needed to when her hand slid up his thigh. My first instinct was to storm over and demand answers, maybe cause a scene. But instead something in me just cracked, not out of rage but clarity. I no longer needed her words. She had already spoken through her actions. So I walked to the bar and took a seat right beside them. I ordered a whiskey neat. She didn't even notice at first, too wrapped up in her fantasy. When she finally turned and saw me, the color drained from her face. "David," she whispered, her voice trembling. The man straightened awkwardly, his eyes darting between us. I lifted my glass slowly and said, calm and steady, "Didn't mean to interrupt. Just thought I'd stop by." The silence that followed was heavy, thick enough to choke on. She tried to speak, but no words could fill that space. I reached into my pocket, slid off my wedding ring, and placed it gently beside her glass. The sound of metal hitting glass was sharp, final. "David, wait," she stammered, her hand shaking. I took a slow step back and shook my head. "No need to explain. You already did." I left a 20 by my drink, turned and walked out. She called after me, but I didn't look back. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel angry or trapped, I felt free. Outside, the night air was crisp and cool, almost cleansing. Each step toward my car felt lighter than the last. That's when I realized how long I'd been clinging to something she'd stopped caring about long ago. Loving someone who doesn't value your love. It's a slow, quiet kind of death. As I drove through the silent streets, I thought about all the nights I'd ignored my instincts. Eventually, I stopped at the park where we'd had our first date. I stared at the spot where she once promised she'd never hurt me. The irony stung, but it didn't break me. My phone buzzed over and over, her name flashing again and again. Missed calls. Desperate messages. I didn't answer. Some betrayals don't deserve an audience. By morning, I blocked her number and called my lawyer. The divorce papers were ready within hours. No fights. No pleading. Just silence and signatures. I packed only my clothes, my old guitar, and left, with a peace I hadn't felt in years. People later asked why I didn't confront her, why I didn't explode. The truth was simple. She wasn't worth it. I didn't need revenge or closure. I just needed distance. Time passed. I started running again, traveling, rediscovering the parts of myself I'd buried under her neglect. Sometimes when I pass a bar and hear the faint clink of glass, I think of that night. Not with pain but with peace. That quiet sound of my ring hitting glass wasn't the end of my marriage. It was the sound of me reclaiming my dignity. She thought she broke me that night. But in truth she freed me. And when I walked out of that bar, I didn't lose a wife. I found myself.